just a bit outside.
Into another episode of Nate Hit the Foul Pole. We have quite the number of topics today as MLB is planning on instituting some rules and some games with the COVID-19 situation. But today we have a guest host, a Mr. Jordan Katz. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Pleased to have you. You can follow him on Twitter at NaturallyCats. Puts out some fire content. And as always, my guest host is Zach Goodman. Zach, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. Excited to have an interview with Melanie Newman today from Masson, so it's going to be a good one. So we're going to get into some news that happened around Major League Baseball, especially today with the MLB division realignments coming out. Every team is placed into a new division that would be in the Grapefruit League and the Cactus League, and they would obviously compete from there. And this is a big if baseball happens at all. But I'm just going to run through the Orioles division here, which would be Grapefruit South. We'd have the Red Sox, the Twins, the Braves, the Rays, and the Orioles. And I have a few issues with this, but first I want to get your guys' take on it.
Go ahead, Jordan.
I'm amazed they actually are willing to split the Yankees and the Red Sox. Like, that is genuinely astonishing as far as the amount of ratings that it would get and everything else. The fact that, however the schedule would work, they're reducing the amount of times that you would be able to put the Red Sox and the Yankees on television is legitimately surprising, given that they are pretty clearly two of the major baseball media darlings based on how often they're on Sunday Night Baseball, how much coverage they get. But also, like, they're in huge markets, to be fair. So the first thing is the idea of the Yankees and the Red Sox not in the same division seems like something that there's no way MLB would actually sign on.
Yeah, you look at the actual division the Orioles would be in. I mean, all of those teams have... Probably not the Red Sox this year with their sell-off, but other three teams have a potential to win at least 90 games. I mean, that's kind of similar to how it is now with the AL East, but, I mean, the Orioles would be lucky to win 50 games, you know, in this current format, and that's if they play the whole 162-game season. I say bring on Kumar Rocker. I'm all for this. I want him to lose as much as possible, and, you know, I think it's very possible with this alignment.
So I'm not actually mad at this for the Orioles' sake. I'm more upset about this for a lot of the other competing teams. If you look at the Grapefruit South, we have the Twins, the Braves, and the Rays. And those, like you said, are three teams that could win 90 games. How does that work? I don't know how three teams in the same division are going to be able to win 90 games. That rarely happens. They're all going to be extremely impacted by this. And this is with other divisions, too. If you look at the Dodgers and the White Sox and the Reds, the Indians, Angels, you get a team like the Dodgers who's just going to dominate that, while you have other divisions like the East with the Nationals, Houston, the Cardinals, all possible 90-win teams. So if you look up and down, I don't really think this is well laid out. It's not fair. You're going to get a lot of teams just dominating, just one team dominating and winning 100 games, 110 games maybe. And then you're going to get a lot of other teams who are going to be really impacted because they were going to win 90 games and now only are going to win 60 or 70 because they have to face off against two other really, really good teams.
Yeah, with all due respect to what the White Sox have done, and the Indians are still going to have Lindor, Ramirez, etc., I feel like the Twins are the team that would be the most angry about this, because I feel like they went from being division favorites to probably still being division favorites. They added Donaldson, they added Kenta Maeda, they added Rich Hill. I feel like they added a fourth competent Major League Baseball player. And like I feel like it would be pretty fair to say that they would still win the division over the Indians and the White Sox. And now that's significantly less likely. So I feel like if you had to rank from like 1 to 30 based on like happy to unhappy for the realignment, I feel like the Twins would be by far the angriest about going from probably a division they can still win by like 5-10 games to having to be in a fight with the Braves and the Rays for it.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, we've seen Rob Manfred do this in the past where he just kind of throws ideas out there just to see if like fans warm up to it. And that's happened so much in the last month or two. I wonder if this is sort of a precursor to if they eventually do a division realignment and they do it by region. I've seen that kind of tossed around on a few different media outlets, and I wonder if this is just kind of a precursor just to see if fans, think it makes sense.
Yeah, it's definitely possible, and I know a lot of people have complained about small market teams being in the division with huge market teams like the Orioles and the Yankees. So maybe we could see a division realignment coming too. But talking about the Yankees, you look at them, and they're in the Grapefruit North, and the four other teams in that division are the Phillies, Blue Jays, Tigers, and Pirates. It is almost impossible for the Yankees to lose even 50 games. I don't see any way where the Yankees lose that division. First of all, they will never lose that division, but I could even see them losing as little as 50 games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Phillies would really be the only serious threat, and I don't think they're on the same level as the Yankees are at this point, even though with, adding Zach Wheeler. Yeah, it's pretty clear cut, but I think the MLB's already seen a little bit of backlash online for this, and like I said, this is just kind of spitballing ideas. So
yeah, like you said before, I mean, Manfred's just throwing ideas around, and I think they're trying to find the best way to get this done and as soon as possible. I don't really think any of this is stuff that's actually relevant. I don't know if anything will actually happen. I know someone within MLB today said, don't listen to anything you hear, because it's all just, like you said, spitballing. So maybe we'll see some of this happen, but maybe, like you said, this is more of a precursor to what could happen in coming years. I don't think a division realignment here for this year would really be smart, and maybe it's just an idea that they've already thrown out the window.
Yeah. I also want to say the Grapefruit East seems like it has plenty of compelling narratives. You would have the World Series rematch with the Nats and the Astros. You would have the Astros and the Mets in the we had to fire our manager due to cheating matchup. We can't forget the Astros and the Cardinals, who had back-to-back pretty memorable NLCSs, and then they had the Cardinals hacking the Astros, and a guy literally went to jail for it. So if you had to create a division for the most intriguing storylines possible, I feel like you can do worse than Grapefruit East. So I will give them credit for creating fun stories for 4 of the 5 teams, and then the Marlins are just kind of chilling out.
So I do want to also bring up something else the MLB talked about today, and that is the MLB The Show Players League. And the Orioles representative, of course, will be Dwight Smith Jr. What do you guys think about that? Is there anybody you see winning this? Personally, for me, it's Trevor May, for the Twins. He's a big gamer, and I think he has an easy edge. But, Dwight Smith Jr. I could actually see, doing pretty well, because he seems like a guy who's really into video games. And if you go on his Instagram story, he's always doing something interesting. So maybe him. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like Dwight Smith's got the big trust on his side, so
I appreciate that.
Didn't really work out for the Ravens at the end of the season, but, it's got some magic to it. So I didn't look at the full list, to be totally honest with you, but like you said, Trevor May, big-time gamer. When I did my old podcast with my friend Kyle, he would always comment in his little Twitch chat box, trying to get him on our podcast. Didn't work out, but he's got experience gaming, so I'd like to give him the edge.
I feel like that's a safe pick, given that the Twins do have a good, because my understanding is everyone's using their team's lineup, so...
Oh, yeah, Dwight Smith's done, everyone.
So, yeah, I mean, the Twins won 100 games. Like I said earlier, they added 3 pretty useful pieces. They have a better pitching rotation. They have Donaldson to be another person that can hit 30 homers. They play a normal real season. So, I mean, if you combine strength of roster and strength of gamer, then... yes, I would place a $5 bet at my local establishment on Trevor May.
Sounds like a good bet, but I don't know. Gavin Lux could also be another guy who does really well. He has the Dodgers' premier pitching, premier hitting. I don't know how much of a gamer he is. I'm guessing he, because of his age, he's probably into it a little bit. But yeah, with that lineup and that pitching rotation, they should do pretty well.
Do you know if Will Myers is participating?
Fernando Tatis is the representative for
They must have banned him from all video games. I don't know if you guys remember that. I
do not remember that, if you would like to share.
He was on Twitch, and he was bad-mouthing Andy Green, his manager.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, Andy Green, he has no idea what he's doing.
Wow.
And it was live at the time.
That's true, but they didn't ban Snell after he called Xavier Edwards a slapdick prospect. So. I wanted to get that on audio.
Very good point.
Yeah, Blake Snell, I believe, is doing this. Yes, he is. So he's a big gamer as well, for sure.
Yeah.
And I saw he was making bets with Aaron Judge the other day about which team is going to win more games. So we'll see how that works out. But if you look through this list, the majority of guys are under 30. I think almost all of them are under 30, maybe with the exception of a few, but it's generally the younger crowd here. So that should be a very...
I would love to see Bartolo on that.
I feel like Bartolo would be pretty good, not going to lie.
It'd be funny to have one of the older guys and just saying, this isn't as good as MVP baseball. Let me tell you, kids, back in my day, like just going on this entire rant.
I think Matt
will never touch MVP baseball.
I think Matt Carpenter or Carlos Santana is the oldest ones on here, but this should be an interesting thing, and I think a lot of people who like MLB follow MLB The Show as well, and it should be interesting for a lot of the younger crowd, so I'm looking forward to that.
I'm going to need to see somebody do a creative player and create John Dowd.
He's Reggie Stalker on MLB The Show. Please use your proper name.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought Carlos Santana being in the tournament is funny because there was a story that one year he was on the Phillies where he destroyed a TV because they were playing Fortnite. So I suppose he supports MLB The Show, but not Fortnite. But it's just very funny that the guy who literally got mad enough at video games to destroy a TV is now participating in a video game tournament.
So we have in Major League Baseball guys smashing TVs because of cheating in the Astro scandal and because of Fortnite. It's a good double standard, I guess. So we had some other news just recently come out about a beloved former Oriole in Mark Reynolds. Hit a lot of home runs for us in 2012 when we made the playoffs for the first time in a long time. And I think he's really a big name for Orioles fans because the guy was just a cog in the middle of our lineup and would always just hit 35 home runs, 40 home runs. A huge player. I know you guys are huge fans, so I'd like to get your take on it.
I like Mark Reynolds because he had 3 different things that I feel like most people remember him by for specific moments. One was the 2-homer game for Cal Statue Night. Number 2 is the gif of Buck extending his hand at Fenway for a handshake, high five, fist bump, whatever.
That is a famous gif.
Buck just walks by and Buck just goes like a little fist pump to himself. And then there was the meme of him eating sunflowers while David Ortiz jogged past him. So that became its own meme. So, I don't know how many people you come across where they had a memorable moment in an incredibly memorable regular season game, and then created a very funny GIF and created a very funny Photoshop meme template.
I would say my 2 favorite dugout moments of all time and the most gifable moments were like you just said, the lack of handshake from Reynolds to Buck, and I think number 2 is the Wade Miley giving the finger to the other dugout. That was just amazing.
A classic.
But yeah, Mark Reynolds, the sheriff. I mean, there's only so much you can say about a guy, integral part of that 2012 team that made the playoffs. There was a story that came out that said he loved the Orioles so much when he went to Milwaukee, all he wanted to do was talk to the other team. He didn't want to talk to his own teammates during the Milwaukee Orioles series. So I think that just goes to show, the great culture that was built in Baltimore from that 2012 to 2016 era, that Buck era, and he was sorely missed as soon as he left town.
Yeah, one of the biggest memories I have of Mark Reynolds is when he hit a home run. It wasn't just a home run. I mean, it wouldn't go 350. It would go 450. I mean, the guy would hit absolute tanks. It was the longest home runs, maybe besides Chris Davis, for the Orioles back in that era. And I just have memories of going to games and seeing him hit monster shots. And I think a lot of people love home runs. Home runs are a huge thing in MLB. MLB loves home runs. They juice the balls. So Mark Reynolds was juicing the balls before the balls were juiced, hitting absolute tanks. So, he's a lot of fond memories here.
So I mentioned the Cal Statue game. That was part of probably one of the most ridiculous hot streaks in Orioles history. 9-game span, he had 9 homers. He didn't do it in 9 straight, but he had 9 games of 9 homers. If you look, when he started the hot streak, his slugging percentage was at .397, and when it ended, it was at .467. So, he had, a homer per game will do that. And the funniest part is he didn't hit any doubles. He didn't hit any triples. He had, as best I can tell, 3 singles. So he just came up to bat, hit lots of homers, and if he made solid contact, it wasn't a double, it wasn't a triple, it was completely gone. So I enjoyed that was just a completely absurd hot streak and a run where they went 6-3. So, I mean, it was pretty helpful for the team, too.
We will now get to our interview with Masson's Melanie Newman.
We're welcomed in by Melanie Newman. She is the newest broadcaster from Masson, is starting this season for the Baltimore Orioles. She's had a long past in baseball. Melanie, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. I think kind of like everybody else right now, we're just hanging out at home.
For sure, absolutely. So we have a couple questions for you here, and I just want to welcome you to Baltimore because this is your first year.
Thank you. I'm excited about it.
We are too. So what's your experience been like working so far from Masson?
We haven't gotten to have much of one. I had one radio call under my belt before we kind of put spring training on a hiatus for now. I can say up to this point, just the phone calls and the Zoom meetings and everything else that we've done in waiting for the season to roll has been great. Everyone's been super welcoming and full of ideas, but also wanting to hear ideas from everybody else. It's very much an equal giving as far as that goes, and hearing everybody out and understanding that everybody brings in a different perspective. So it makes me excited to finally get to work with them at some point sooner than later.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Definitely a great organization, and alongside the Baltimore Orioles, should be a lot of fun.
So, Melanie, what excites you about a team like the Orioles? This is your first major league job. Maybe is it the fact that you're seeing a team grow right before your eyes, or?
That's pretty much the nail on the head, is just knowing that you're coming into a point in the organization where you kind of get to see the building blocks being laid. It's great when you inherit a winning team and they're rolling and they already know where they want to be, but it's just that much more special to have the responsibility and the privilege to be there at the beginning, when they are still figuring things out, when they're analyzing their foundation and what they want to strengthen, and the other parts that they, analyze that those are on a good track, and let's just keep doing what we've done in that space. And I think it's going to make those big seasons, the good seasons, all that more special, having been there from the start and seeing what all these amazing minds have been putting into it.
Great point.
Ooh, it's my turn. Hi, I'm Jordan, the guest host. So as a recent graduate of journalism school at Maryland, I'm curious what you felt that you learned in college, both from journalism school and from hands-on experience broadcasting and doing other journalism in college.
Yeah, I definitely think that the scope for journalism is changing these days, and with college programs, it's not enough just to take classes anymore and graduate. When you graduate, you have to already have experience. You have to have a reel that you're able to show employers. It's not like other jobs where, you can get hired on as a CPA or an office worker and then kind of slowly work your way up and receive training from them. They want the hard proof of what you're capable of doing immediately. And it's tough. And I feel very fortunate that my time in college, we took advantage of that. We had classes that would send us out on campus to shoot new footage and put together packages and demo reels, every week. And that kind of meant taking a camera and taking control 3 to 4 times and having to develop new stories. When you're at the same school for 4 years, that does challenge you a little bit to find new angles and to find different things that people haven't talked about yet. But the professors all came in with real-world experience as well, and a lot of them were adjunct professors who were also still actively holding down jobs in other areas of the media, whether that was as a legal professional representing media or working for an actual news station or a different university in their media department, and they were able to give us that very genuine advice on the realities and the fact that, it does take a long time to climb up through the ranks, and you kind of have to be okay really stretching it out there, especially financially, for a while until you get to the point where someone does make that hire and they do give you that yes. So I think, it's a cliche, but it's the ultimate truth with journalism is, you get out of it what you put into it. And I know that, for those of us who did go through the program and tried to make sure we got as much as we could and got the internships and got the real life work before we walked across the stage, there's probably kids who just, take the classes and think that's going to get them there as well. And, it does sometimes. A lot of times that ends up more of a PR and a marketing role. It's just all what you want to get out of it at the end of the day.
So you talk about advice and all the things you learned at college, but what can you learn from a broadcasting legend like Gary Thorne?
Gary's awesome. So I had the pleasure of meeting Gary and the entire crew last season at an Orioles-Royals game. We actually had the off day in the Carolina League, and Camden was 30 minutes from where we were at, so it was really a no-brainer to go over there. But just his tone and his persona going into broadcast, it's never hyper serious. I think he understands when, you do need to have that settled focus and that locked in aspect. But I mean, it's baseball, and we're in a point right now, it's rebuilding, where you can't browbeat the little things and the statistics and everything else. And so it's a conversation, and it's that chance that everybody ultimately wants from their broadcaster to feel like he's more or less just inviting themselves in to hang out in their living room with him and Palmer and the rest of the crew for a couple hours every day and talk baseball, but also talk life and, the stuff that's going around in the city and what else that they've seen or that they want to talk about. And I think that's really special, is having that feel that he has to kind of pick and choose, not only what your tone is, but what messages you have to put across that day.
Yeah, he's definitely a very welcoming voice, and I think he's a very well-recognized person in Baltimore. So every night when you turn on your TV and you watch an Orioles game and Gary Thorne's there, it makes everyone feel at home.
So what is the typical schedule for, let's say, a 7 o'clock first pitch, as far as when you get to the stadium, when you leave the stadium, what sort of pregame prep you do, etc.?
So, unfortunately, I can't speak to the Major League side of that preparation with a night game because we haven't had it yet. Mm-hmm. And it is a different environment this year, kind of switching up my role. For the minor league end of things, it doesn't matter if it's a day game, a night game, or anything in between. The average day is 9 a.m. until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and that starts with running stat packs and pushing advanced stuff that the coaching staff want for both sides if we're at home, making sure that they have everything that they need for the day, that they know which coordinators are coming in. And on the other side of that, if coordinators expect something from us or they're coming down and they need certain materials prepped in advance, lending a hand and making sure that happens. You dive from there into game notes, writing, researching, making sure that those are all up to date and ready to be printed, distributed, whoever else needs them in the local media, pregame interviews, running live footage of batting practice, sitting down with players and giving fans a little bit of that inside perspective, and then just kind of trying to take whatever time you have left after that, handling any outside media, community requests, the whole nine, because minor league baseball obviously expands much more than just the game itself. It's how they react with the community around them, and taking what you can get to sit down with the visiting broadcaster, kind of see where their team's at, if they have storylines that you can share on the broadcast, going on air, writing the pregame stuff beforehand, wrapping up the broadcast, writing the post-game write-up, sending that out, and creating a video highlight melt of the game that just happened so that can go out on social, and doing it all again the next day.
So, Melanie, you are one of 6 women in the nation to call play-by-play for professional baseball teams. What would you say to other young women coming up in the broadcasting industry?
I just think if you know that this is what you want to do, don't be daunted by it. We're very fortunate this year. We had 4 of us on the minor league side who got to get together in Lexington, Kentucky, and we all came from different backgrounds. And some of us absolutely knew we wanted to be broadcasters, and some of us didn't. I mean, I was even, kind of fumbling my way through. I started out in print before I was convinced to try broadcast. And the dominoes just fell perfectly, and I listened when I felt that I had found my calling. So I don't really think it pays to be overcritical of yourself or to think, well, I'm not like this person, or, they all have a different story than me. That's kind of the point, is that's how we all end up here, because we have different stories and different backgrounds. We bring something different to the game. If we were all the same, there would be no point in any of us being on air, because one of us could do everybody else's job. And it's tough, it's hard work, especially in the minor leagues. And I've had people before say, oh, well, I'm just cut out for the majors. And we all laugh, and we're like, yeah, I mean, everybody ideally is cut out for the majors, but it really is about paying your dues. And if you can find and embrace that edge of the minor league life, I mean, it is beautiful. And it's something that so many people don't get to experience on that level, just being close with the guys and being there on the day in and day out and getting to hear from the coaches in a much more smaller setting about why they are there, their philosophy on the game and the organization and everything else around it. And I feel like it doesn't apply to just women, but I mean men as well. We're all in this together. I have a ton of male counterparts in this organization who are still the reason that I'm here. When I felt like it was tough or I wanted to give up or I wasn't making enough or I wasn't getting any sleep, they talked me through it just as much as the females did to keep me here. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And so now to move and to still see those 4 women in the minors, but now to see Susan Waldman with the Yankees and, everybody else who's around it, Jenny Kavnar with Colorado, it's such a special group. And I can safely say that all the ones already here are more than willing to get to the top and lend a hand down to those who are beneath them. And if that's something you wanted to pursue, by all means know that we're all here to be not only looked up to, but to reach out. And we're more than willing. I mean, advice is free.
So, Melanie, just as a bit of a wrap-up for you, you've had experience working both in the booth and on the sidelines. What would you say your favorite aspect of each is and why?
I think they're just so different. And, I mean, kind of like I said earlier with feeling my way through and not really knowing what I wanted to do, that's how all of this unfolded in the first place. I started out in print, went to broadcasting, thought I would be a studio host, gave a shot at live reporting and absolutely fell in love with it and thought, okay, well, this is what I'll do. I'll do live sidelines and I'll really work on those stories and those relationships. And then I got the opportunity for play-by-play and, said sure to that. I mean, why would you say no to any opportunity? And what I found was the really unique aspect that I didn't have to give up the storytelling of the sidelines once I moved into the booth, that was actually something I could incorporate even heavier into my play-by-play role, having that background of having to be down on the sideline. So I think they both have their unique aspects, certainly with the play-by-play role. Those are some of my fondest memories last year, is just sitting on the windowsill of the booth, and it'd be a balmy night, and you get to tell fans and parents who are back home what's going on. Tell them what the sky looks like right now. Talk about the game. Talk about the guy who's breaking out of a slump. It's a very precious responsibility to have, and it just makes it all that much more special when you get to bring out, the fact that their sons aren't just number machines. One of them is a professional cook, and he learned that as a way to have a side job while he's in the minors. Or, this other guy who studied at Cornell and developed his own line of gear. It's the little things that I'm finding a lot of people tend to gloss over and just want to talk about numbers and production. That's huge. And then you flip that into the sideline role, and obviously all of that just magnifies. You're down there with the team. You get to talk about the small stuff. But then you also get to incorporate a lot more of the community. And, if there's a special guest in attendance that night, or there's a concert or an event going on, because, again, you have to have that tie to your surroundings. That's what draws people into baseball, is they feel like they're a part of something, and they see those people out around them making a difference as well. And so you get to take it a step further from this is the heartbeat of the player to this is the heartbeat of the team. And this is why you should tune in every night. And I feel so fortunate that for the first time, as far as I've seen with most major league teams, I was given that opportunity with Baltimore to where I didn't have to choose between the booth or the sidelines. I get to have both.
Yeah, definitely. I think you definitely provide some great insight, and thanks so much for coming on the show, Melanie. We're happy to have you as part of the Orioles family.
No, thank you guys. I'm so ready to finally see them take the field again.
Yes, we are too. We're ready for baseball to get back.
All in that same boat.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, thank you guys.
That was our interview with MASN's Melanie Newman. Obviously, we're happy to have her in Baltimore. I think she's going to be a great addition to the team. In the limited time that she's been with the Orioles in the spring training game, she sounds like she definitely knows what she's doing, and she is going to be a great asset. We did want to finish up the show with a little bit of a discussion on Cal Ripken's streak. This was replayed a few days back on I believe ESPN actually showed it. One of the greatest games. So, yeah, just throw it up to you guys. What do you look back on? We were obviously too young, but what do you look back on at the streak? What are some of the things that stood out to you?
Well, I just think it's what it meant to people. I don't think the streak as a whole is, as impressive as some other records. It's a great record, but I think, the significance of this streak was about bringing people together and, the city of Baltimore together. And, Fred Manfra was commenting that, it was like he was like a blue-collar worker, Cal Ripken. I mean, he showed up and worked every day. He didn't complain. He never got injured. People really appreciate that. Baltimore is a blue-collar city. That's what we are. So I think a lot of people connected to Cal Ripken. People loved him. He's arguably the most beloved Oriole, maybe besides, maybe Chris Davis or Adam Jones. He's a beloved Oriole, and people really took his streak and made it into a really, really big thing, and it was a really special night.
So I learned this from the John Boyce video that he did about the Mariners. He's been doing a weekly video about the history about the Mariners, is that the Angels were the opponent for this. And the Angels had these 2 days of fanfare where their game was completely secondary. And then they tied for the division. So, it's one of those things that didn't seem important at the time, but in hindsight, it's kind of curious that, there was another team playing in 21-30 and 21-31, and they lost both of those games, and then they wound up having a tiebreaker with the Mariners for the division. So it's one of those things that, it didn't seem significant at the time. It's like, yep, that's the Angels, so that's the other team, not important. But, they played 2 games that were a complete spectacle and not 2 normal baseball games. They lost both of them, and then that might have wound up costing them the division. So it's one of those things that, never really occurred to me until I learned more about the 95 season, how the Angels had, 10-game lead, some, major lead they had over the Mariners, then they collapsed. So it's one of those things that you generally don't want in the middle of a division race to have 2 games where you're the sideshow.
Yeah, and I wanted to play off your point about the Angels here, because that's true, but also this is one of the highest rated games and most watched games of any game in Orioles history, and then any game in baseball history as well. This is, I believe, top 5, but behind a few World Series games, obviously. I would like to know if there's any sort of projection on how many more people would have watched if this was the Yankees or the Dodgers we were playing. Because I feel like maybe a lot of people didn't care as much because we played the Angels. And even though the Angels were a pretty decent team back then, they don't have the same sort of fanfare as the Dodgers or the Red Sox or the Yankees. So I don't know how that would have affected it, but this may be, if we played one of those teams, the most watched game of all time.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been affected slightly. I think the great thing about sports is people just care about storylines. I think you always get more of an audience that tune into Sunday Night Baseball when you have the Yankees and the Red Sox or the Cardinals and the Cubs. That's always going to be the case. But I think for special occasions like this, more people tune in, and I don't really know how much it affects who the team is. If you're watching the NFL and you watch Patrick Mahomes, he plays for a Kansas City team. That's a very small market team. So you're always going to tune into the storylines, into what everybody's talking about. I do see your point. Maybe more people would tune in, but I think just overall, especially for baseball, people want to tune into what everyone cares about. And everyone at that moment cared about Cal. They cared about baseball really coming back after the 94 strike, and it really brought back a lot of people back into the game.
Yeah, I feel like the opponent wouldn't have mattered, but I feel like if Cal himself, God forbid I speak this into existence, was a Yankee, was a Dodger, was a Red Sox, was a Cub, etc., I don't feel like the opponent could have mattered. The Orioles could have scheduled the Bay Sox for that game, and people would have. So, I really don't think the opponent would have mattered, but, if Cal was winning a World Series, winning an MVP, providing his level of production at shortstop for a larger market team, I feel like that would have boosted the ratings, and it would have made him more well-known before 95, 94, when he was really getting close. So I don't feel like people were like, oh, someone's breaking a record that's been held for 60 years? And it's against the Angels. Oh, I don't know about that. I sincerely don't think the opponent mattered, but I think if Cal played for, the upper echelon of media attention baseball teams, that would have made a more significant difference than if they were facing the Angels compared to the Yankees, Red Sox, etc.
Yeah, I was reading a thing about Derek Jeter versus Cal Ripken the other day, and they were comparing DRS, so defensive runs saved, and Cal Ripken versus Derek Jeter, and Cal had about 300 more defensive runs saved in his career. Let's just be clear here. Jeter was in the negatives, and Cal was, I believe, in the mid-200s. So, obviously, Derek Jeter was a great player. Over 3,000 hits, a lot of home runs, clutch player. He's Mr. November. A fantastic player. I'm not trying to take anything away from Jeter here. But if you do look at Cal Ripken, much better career than Jeter and a much better player than Jeter overall. But maybe since he was in Baltimore, like you said, didn't get the same kind of fanfare that he would have been in New York or something like that. So, not trying to take away anything from Derek Jeter, but maybe a little overhyped because of the market he was in. Cal Ripken never got to play in that market. He was an Oriole for life, which we all really appreciate. But it would have been really interesting to see if he had been on another team.
I've got a couple of fast facts for you guys if you want them.
Sounds
during
good.
the streak.
Sure.
So, Ripken severely twisted his right knee during a brawl in 1993.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm aware of that.
He was sore the next day, but he still played. And had he sat out, the streak would have ended at 1790. Doesn't have the same ring as 2131. And he also had ankle injuries in 1985 and 1992 that could have kept him out. During a team photo shoot in 1996 during the All-Star game, White Sox pitcher Roberto Hernandez slipped and broke Ripken's nose. So that's another fun fact. They were just trying to take him out, looks like, to me. And then, let's see here. As you guys probably know, the 1994 strike, they were talking about bringing replacement players in 1995, and Peter Angelos was the owner that put his foot down and said, I will forfeit games if we have replacement players, and that would have effectively ended the streak, and that would have been 1995, so that would have been the 21-31 season.
Yeah, Peter Angelos gets a lot of crap from a lot of Orioles fans. I'm sure a lot of people are not too happy with him, especially right now. But that was definitely the best thing he ever did, and and it saved Cal's streak. And if you look at Cal's streak overall, I think people see the number, and yeah, it's impressive. It's really great. But if you go back, and like you said, all the little injuries he had through it, and he just played through them, and it would never happen today. This record is unbreakable. I mean, I think we have to look at it like that. This is never going to be broken, because guys don't even play every day. You take Mike Trout, he's not going to play every day. He's going to get injured, and even if he is injured, they're not going to just say, go out there. Players are more protected these days, and that's why the streak will never be broken. All the injuries Cal had, it's amazing that he played through all of it. So even in 1997, he played through nerve damage, which is ridiculous. He couldn't even sit on the bench, yet he played every game. And that just shows the tough as nails, Ripken way mentality. And, I think you got to look at the little things that happened to him, and, he just played through them. And that's amazing. That will never happen again.
Yeah, just to speak to that, I just saw a tweet from Sarah Langs. She said, just to put it into perspective with active players, you say like players don't play every day nowadays. Of the 61 active streaks, it would take 61 of the current highest streaks to match 26-36, which would break the record.
26-33.
Let me rephrase that. Let me rephrase that. The 61 highest streaks right now would total 26-36.
Okay, gotcha.
So it takes 61 players to, get past Ripken, and the longest current streak is Whit Merrifield, and he is at 247. So it ain't happening.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting with the NFL because you see a lot of NFL quarterbacks, like Phillip Rivers is the most notable one, who's just played hundreds of games in a row, and you take the number 100 or wherever Phillip Rivers is at, and you look at that and you're like, wow, that's incredible. But Cal Ripken is over 2,000, and and I know that football and baseball, they don't play every day. There's a difference there, but it's just amazing that this guy was able to put his name in the lineup every day and come out with injuries he had. And it's just a really different game from now, and it will never happen again. Which I said, I think it's a great thing in the Orioles' history.
Yeah, I think it's a unique record because it's not like you have to specifically be focused on something that isn't just something you accomplish in normal gameplay. Like the Bonds record or the DiMaggio record. Like, you can just do that while going about it. Cow streak, you have to specifically be focused on doing that streak, because it means you can't take a day off, you can't get injured. So it's a unique streak compared to Cy Young's wins or Bonds homers or other things like that, because you can't take a day off. You have to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over for God knows how many years. Whereas like other streaks, you can get, maybe someone can somehow get to 512 wins if they have the most incredible durability ever seen in baseball. But even then, they'd be doing it once every 5 days for, I don't know, 30 years or whatever. So like that I just always have found the streak fascinating, because it's not the same as other counting stats, because you have to specifically be focused on breaking that one specific streak or record.
And what would you guys say is the most unbreakable record besides Ripken's?
Oh, it's got to be Cy Young's win total, right?
Yeah, I would say
How
that.
many does he have?
511.
Yeah, no chance.
Yeah, I think the record for complete games that Cy Young holds, which is 749, will also never be broken, because nobody throws complete games anymore. These guys would throw 40 or 50 complete games a season, which is ridiculous.
Now, Rob Manfred has talked about shortening games to 7 innings.
That is an interesting.
You never know.
That is an interesting proposition, and if you look at most teams, though, in the past 3 years or so, guys still aren't going 7 innings unless you're a really premier pitcher.
True.
I mean, the Justin Verlanders, the Garrett Coles of the world, they're going to go 7 innings, 8 innings on most days. That's just, if they have a good day, that's what they'll do. But if you look at a guy like Dylan Bundy, rarely made it to 7 innings last year. Most average pitchers in the league never make it to 7 innings, so I doubt you'll see that record be broken. And even if it was broken, I feel it would be tainted because it would be less innings. But I think the complete games record's pretty unbreakable.
Yeah, that was something I was thinking about. If they do 7 innings, 50-man rosters, et cetera, is like how people will assess that historically. Like if someone only had 7 innings, played 162 games of 7 innings baseball. Like, how do you assess their career if they finish, 10 homers short of 500, knowing they got whatever 2 times 1, 300 or so innings that they didn't get to play compared to a normal season. So that's something that's always fascinated me, with if we're going to have some sort of bizarro coronavirus baseball league where everyone plays 7-inning doubleheaders with 40, 50-man rosters, and there's no mound visits, and it's actually 2 strikes for a strikeout or whatever else. Whatever rule changes they make, given that baseball has such a strong emphasis on its history, how that would work if we play a full season of 7-inning games and people suddenly are 10 homers short of 500 or 12 hits short of 3,000, how people would assess their careers given they played 1 year of weird baseball when everyone else played pretty normal baseball in comparison.
Yeah, I mean, look at Babe Ruth's 714 home runs, right? That was done in a shorter season, right? Wasn't it 152 games or whatever back then?
154, and there's a whole movie about if 61 should have counted. It's with stars. Wait, does the Starbilly Crystal was it directed by him? But
it was directed.
Yeah, that was a whole thing. When they bumped it up to 162 and the whole Mantle Maris race. So that's been a thing that's been going on for over 50 years. But did the math right for that? Of how should we count stats based on rule changes?
Very good point.
Yeah, and if this does have implications for the long run of Major League Baseball, and down the road, we only are playing 7-inning games every year, and this is not just a coronavirus thing, it's going to change the course of history. And, I mean, you might see guys starting more games, and maybe Ripken's streak does get broken. I highly doubt it, but you never know. It could change a lot of things. I mean, we're going to see much less 50 home run seasons. We're going to see maybe less 40 home run seasons. It's going to be, really what changed the course of history.
Well, I think another point, too, is if they make these divisions more regional, and you have more rest because you're not flying as far and sleeping as little, maybe you'll have guys that are be more, well rested, and they'll say, well, maybe I can play every day of the week. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's, a talking point at least.
I did want to throw out that, as best as I can tell, the longest consecutive game streak that started in the 21st century belongs to none other than former Orioles shortstop Miguel Tejada, who is 5th all time. I can't read 4-digit numbers very well. It's 1152. I just cannot read them. So 1,152? Yeah, that.
Yep.
So he's 5th all time. It's Cal first, Lou Gehrig second. There is no way anyone besides the most devoted baseball nut could name 3 and 4. It's some guy named Everett Scott, who I guess had the record before Gehrig broke it, and then Steve Garvey at 4. So looking at the list is funny. There's some Hall of Famers. 6 is Billy Williams, who was a really successful guy for the Cubs. 8th is Stan Musial, who's a clear first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best left-handed hitters of all time. Then there's random people like Sandy Alomar Sr. is 19th all time, and Prince Fielder. Prince Fielder of all people is 25th, which is kind of impressive. So it's really a random collection of guys. So it's being durable and being willing to play is a unique skill. The leaderboard for consecutive games isn't going to match the leaderboard for any other MLB career record.
Yeah, I think another interesting factoid I found when I was doing my research is Lou Gehrig's monument at Yankee Stadium still reads, amazing record, 2130 consecutive games, should stand for all time. Still says that. So I think we one-up them, and we say Cal Streak will stand for all time.
Yeah.
I agree that Yankee Stadium should probably change that. But, if they were saying that back then, and we're saying this now, that no one will break Cal Streak, we could be completely wrong. We could have a monument and said, Zach Goodman said that no one will ever break Cal Streak. And so you never know. Baseball is going through a lot of change right now, and it's probably going to go through a lot of change in the next 20, 30 years of baseball. So, we could see a guy break Barry Bonds' home run record. We could see more complete games come back. We could see incredible change in the sport. So, and that will be a lot of fun. It's always good. Changes, helps modernize things. And, baseball obviously is a little bit struggling right now with gaining attendance and TV ratings and all of that. So change is coming, and it's going to really change the course of history as well as with statistics.
Yeah, using the math of when Gehrig completed his streak to when Cal completed his streak, we should expect 26-33 to happen in approximately 2057, just using the basic math of how long it takes the consecutive game streak.
Whit Merrifield III. You heard it here first.
WM3. Yeah, we'll talk about that probably in an upcoming episode, but I think in terms of growing the game, I think there's a ton they could be doing, and, opening up the floodgates of advanced media. Yeah, I said it. That would definitely help, but we'll talk about that in another podcast. All right, so if you guys have nothing else, I think that'll wrap up this episode of Nate Hit the Foul Pole. Much thanks to Jordan Katz. Jordan, did you want to plug your Twitter account real quick?
Yeah, at Naturally Katz. Tweet about the Orioles, I guess. There's not as much stuff to tweet about now, so there might occasionally be politics tweets, so fair warning. If you are a stick-to sports person, I would advise you to not follow, because, there's no sports to tweet about, and I got political opinions, and sometimes I'll share them. Not that often. I'm respectable about it. But, yeah, follow me if you are interested in sports and can also tolerate some political stuff. If you want no politics whatsoever, you're going to be disappointed. But, yeah, if you like sports and also occasionally politics, give it a follow.
He's one of my favorite follows, so I vouch for him.
Me too.
As always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at FoulPolePod. Please shoot us a follow, a retweet when you see an episode. Definitely helps us out. You can write us a review on iTunes. Give us a 5-star rating. That definitely helps us in the rankings, in the podcast rankings. We're also on SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And you know what? Tell a friend. Tell a friend or a family member. We're all quarantining together. So it'll be a great time to listen to podcasts. And we will see you next week.